Hello everyone. Before we get started with this first episode of the Warhammer Fantasy RPG 2nd Edition, I wanted to just go over a few quick things. The first being that this series essentially is going to be broken up into various episodes depending on length. Most I'll probably try and put between an hour and 2 hours. But for this first tutorial session, we kind of did a big mega session that ended up lasting for at least 7 hours. But I'm not going to put out a 7-hour video. So what I've decided to do instead is to go ahead and break up the first session into about 4 or 5 parts that I'm going to be releasing over the course of the next few days. But this gives a nice one up so that I should be able to do other sessions so that you have a regular stream of sessions. I hope you guys enjoy this. This may not be your cup of tea. You may watch this and think it's the dumbest crap in the universe and you don't ever want to see it again. In which case, like I think I said at the end of the last episode, but I'll go ahead and say it here at the beginning of the first one. If you do not like this, obviously you don't have to watch it. But if you don't like it, why not hit the dislike button? And if you do like it, hit the like button. This will give me a nice little way to see how you guys feel about this. If you guys really enjoy the roleplay and you want to see more of it and you enjoy watching me torture my various players, great. Then I will continue to put that content up here on the channel. If y'all don't like it, then I'll just stop recording it. I'm still going to do it, but I won't record and put it up on the channel. So hopefully you'll like it. It's fun. I will put it in the title and the description, but just as a warning, the language is pretty foul. Just because, we're just having a good time. And I can get pretty mouthy when I'm just enjoying myself. So you have been warned. The language is most certainly not PG-13 through various parts, especially when people are being attacked by, having their arms blasted off by shots or pistols, or giant wolves are leaping down, tearing dwarves apart. So, you have been warned. That being said, I think you guys will enjoy it. It's a pretty good time. It's a bit of a riot. It's not super serious, but if you want to learn how to play the game, this isn't a bad place to learn it. Obviously, I'll be answering questions down in the comments below. Also, as a bit of an incentive, I guess, to watch the series, there will be various events starting with the next session, so probably starting at the end of the tutorial, which will probably be episode 4 for you guys watching, where I will basically ask ideas from the audience, so to speak. So it'll be something like, hey, what kind of monster should I hide in X place if they happen to run into it? And y'all could take a vote and decide what horrific stuff we decide to do to the party. So it might be something like, hey, I'm going to put a trap behind this door. Here are the options for the kind of traps I could do. Here are the effects they would have. Which one do y'all want to vote on? That way y'all get to have some input on how the campaign is shaped and get to partake alongside me in torturing the various player characters. So, with that out of the way, I hope you guys enjoyed this first hour. Just as a note, because it was one long mega session, I wasn't intending it for it to go so long and really lost track of time. So there's the where an episode stops and starts might be a little awkward. But once I have the playlist up with the full tutorial, it'll probably make a lot more sense and be a nice full watch through. That being said, this first one should be about an hour, I think, and the rest will probably be more around 2 hours. So yeah, I hope you guys really enjoy it. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like if you enjoyed it, dislike if you hated it. And yeah, that pretty much covers it. I hope you guys are having a great day. I will be resuming the Mark of Chaos campaign for the Empire today, as well as some other stuff's coming up, like a Mordheim campaign and stuff like that. So yeah, hope you guys are having a good one. Thanks for watching. Bye. So the way this will start, essentially, is all of you have come to the Iron Bull, as this inn is known for various reasons. Obviously, the dwarf has already taken his seat at his table. So has the human bounty hunter. Excuse me. The elf has also already arrived. And Fowl, you are the last person to arrive.
Fair enough.
The only notice you received on the various invitations you received, whether you found it just hanging from a poster looking for work or whatever, was that essentially there is a regiment in Nuln known as the Black Wolves that are looking for mercenaries for a potential job, and they have listed it as being fairly dangerous, but the pay will be excellent. And there is a slight note about having to work with a wizard. They don't go terribly into detail, but all it pretty much said was for you to find your ways here, which all of you did. You can interact with the various characters who are in it. The only character that's like notable is the barkeep, who's the guy right behind Izzy's character, or Vivandrel. I need to memorize all y'all's names. So, that being said, oh, by the way, that reminds me. If you haven't already, in the bottom right where it says as, and then it has like that drop down menu, be sure you change it to your character and not you, because that'll make it easier for me to remember.
Yes.
Alright, and with that, we are pretty much set to go. Fowl, because you're the one entering the inn, I will give you the first move, essentially, in what you're going to decide to do, and we're just going to play it by ear. Once again, this is not high intensity. I'm not, like, going to be slapping people around. It's been a long time since I've done this as well, so we'll just do what we can.
Okay. So, do I just move a certain number of squares, or I just move forward?
You'll just move forward. And in situations like this, you don't have to worry about, like, oh, I can only move so many meters. Okay. That only matters in combat situations. That being said, you walk into the Iron Bull. You hear various talking going around. You can smell moderately decent food. You see the caretaker cleaning out mugs at the table ahead of you. You also see a dark-robed figure standing right by the bar, looking around the room. You obviously identify the various people sitting around. There's a rather bulky-looking man who looks comparatively dangerous compared to most of the patrons in the inn. And in the far corner, you also can spy a dwarf. It looks like he's gazing a little bit too intently with fair disappointment at whatever drink he was given.
I'm gonna walk. I'm gonna start walking towards the dwarf. So
all right, you start making your way across the main area of the Iron Bull. And Morek, you see a human approaching you who's wearing dark robes and has a rather grim aspect about him.
Pray silently that the human goes away.
Unfortunately for you, although he is a servant of the god of dreams and death, he does not hear silent prayers.
Do you sit down or you just come over?
No, I'm just gonna. I'm not gonna actually sit at your table. I'm just gonna sit at the table next to you.
Alright, he sits fairly close to you, but he seems to be gazing vaguely in your direction. At this point, any of you can take action.
Alright, well, Mertin will take out a little folded piece of paper and, pointing it at the person he's sitting next to, will say, "Well, I see that you are looking at the door. Have you seen this man enter this room?" And it's a picture of a guy with a bulbous nose. He says, "This is a criminal that I am looking after. Have you seen him?"
The other patron, who until now was fairly happy that you were apparently the silent type, sort of glares at you blearily from his drink and shakes his head, mumbles something into his cup, and continues drinking.
Well, that was helpful. I'll get up and go ask the barkeep.
Okay, you start heading towards the bar. Does anyone else want to take action while he's on the way?
I'm gonna note his movement and just turn to look at him.
Okay, he approaches. I imagine you take a seat at the stool there, and the barkeep sort of raises an eyebrow at you and puts down the mug that he's working on and seems to wait for you to say something.
So I will order an ale because that's the polite thing to do.
He he seems to sort of flinch at the word ale for a moment and says, "Unfortunately, lad, all we've got at the moment is some rather cheap wine. Although normally we're doing well on stockpiles, for some reason the usual drink hasn't been coming in."
All you have is wine? Well, I guess I can take some. By the way, have you seen this man come in here?
He looks at the paper for a moment and scratches his chin and then shakes his head and says, "Unfortunately not. That being said, I'll get your wine for you." And he sort of looks at your armaments as he's reaching down beneath the table and says, "I don't suppose you're here for the mercenary position, are you?"
Well, I was thinking that it might be a good idea.
He nods and he pulls out a glass and pours you some wine that does look rather fresh, so to speak.
Ah, the grape juice. Thank you.
He passes your way and says, "It's on the house for this. You're going to be working with a good friend of mine."
Oh, who is that?
He sort of glances over at the door for a moment and seems to wait, but then turns his attention back to you and says, "You're going to be working with the captain of the Black Wolves. His name's Rolf. Fairly young lad, but far too serious for my taste." And he holds out his hand and says, "Staymar Holst, by the way. I run this establishment."
Hello, Mr. Holst. My name is Mertin Krieg.
I'm assuming you shake his hand.
Yes, I will shake his hand.
Okay, as you grip his hand, you notice that it's not real.
It's at this point I'm going to start walking towards the bar.
It's made of wood, and he sort of seems to smirk at you and wait for some sort of reaction.
I look at the hand. How good is the craftsmanship of this hand?
He shrugs and says, "Well, it gets me through most days without too many stares." He sort of holds it up for a second. He says, "Lost it to some damn orcs not too far from the city. If it hadn't been for the Iron Bull itself, I'd probably be a dead man right now."
The Iron Bull?
He sort of grins and gestures to the end and says, "Named this place after the steam tank that saved my life. Ran over a giant, it did. Gored it like one of those big old bulls I've heard of from Estolia."
Well, that certainly is a tale.
He nods and strokes his chin for a moment and says, "Pretty impressive, really. One would think that the giant would have just moved out of the way, but nonetheless, it went down pretty hard. Probably drank too much. The thing was stumbling around. Too bad it squished some of me lads while it was doing so."
Well, at least you got away with only losing a hand to the orc.
He grins and then sort of glances towards the man approaching the bar, and his mood seems to fall a little. And he raises an eyebrow and says, "If something happened to one of my patrons, I can assure you it had nothing to do with what I'm serving them."
I'm going to I chuckle under my breath and smile. "I'm not here to administer the rights."
He sort of shrugs a bit and says, "I'd offer you a drink, but I'm not entirely sure. Most, shall we say, patrons of your kind tend not to be interested."
That's fine.
He sort of glances you up and down for a moment and says, "And so what does bring one of your kind into my establishment?"
What else brings a doomsayer to a town?
He frowns and says, "Far too many things I'd rather not have to deal with."
Then let's not speak of them.
He sort of gives you a wary look for a moment, but then turns his attention back to Martin with and sort of gives him one of those looks where he raises his eyebrows and seeking sympathy.
Well, there is a dwarf and an elf in your bar. He might be useful.
He glances at the black-robed elf that's probably almost certainly within hearing range of the lot of you, and gives a sort of looks at the dwarf again as if he didn't consider the possible issues it would cause, and just sort of shakes his head and returns to cleaning out his mug. "Rolf should be here any minute. Hopefully it's more than just you that's turning out for for the mercenary position. I think he was looking for a small group, but I suppose you'll have to do Mertin.
Well, just means more pay for me.
I'm guessing I'm out of earshot of all this conversation.
No, you can almost certainly hear it.
I will get up out of my seat and I will move over to the bar as well.
He won't be going alone. I'm here for it too.
At this, the barkeeper's eyebrows raise and he says, "You're telling me that a servant of Morr is taking on a mercenary position?"
When the god commands, we obey.
Well, that's an ill omen.
he raises an eyebrow in Mertin's direction and says, "Are you sure you still want the job, lad?"
I'm kind of running low on funds right now, so I don't have very much of a choice.
He grins for a moment and almost doesn't notice the dwarf approaching the bar due to its rather high height, but it's impossible to miss such a burly figure.
High height. Oh, the bar's height, okay.
Yes. Not you.
Do you have anything better than this red juice?
He sort of frowns in your general direction and says, "Unfortunately not. We used to have some half-decent ales and other things, but it seems we've run dry lately. For some reason, trade isn't coming in the same."
Trade from where?
The north normally receive most of our drink from Altdorf, but even the fields of the south haven't been producing as they normally are. Troubling times.
I heard mention of work.
He nods, and sort of gestures towards the two humans standing next to you and says, "These two are taking on the mercenary position that the Black Wolves has sent out, apparently. It's good pay if you're looking for it, Master Dwarf."
I'm always looking for good pay.
He grins and says, "Ah, so you're not too different from most of the mountain folk that have visited my establishment, then."
I didn't know there was a difference.
He shrugs and sort of leerily looks towards the black-robed figure not standing too far from the bar again.
I step to the other side of the stool and turn to face the bar.
He seems extremely nervous.
Like so. Would you be so kind as to take a flask, fill it halfway with water, and then halfway with the cheapest wine you have?
At this, he actually seems to brighten up a little and says, "Aye, I can do that, no issue."
Wonderful.
As he sort of tends to it, he shuffles away from his other patrons, towards the elf. And as he hands you a flask filling the specifications you gave, he sort of nervously asks, "So, what brings one of your folks so far from home?"
I have a better question. Why are you interested?
He sort of stumbles for a moment and seems fairly pale and says, "Well, I've never had one of the fair folk of the far island in my establishment before. It's an honor, I suppose. Yes." And he just sort of seems to stare downwards and is sweating profusely.
How fares my order?
He hands it over.
Thank you.
Feel free, mercenaries, to notice another's existence.
So, bounty hunter, I presume. What is this paper that you keep showing people?
This is the sketch I got back in Altdorf of the wanted criminal Victor Sabritz. I have been tracking him for a very long time. Have you seen him?
No. But then again, I do not pay much attention to the news of the living.
Though, it would always be great if he was dead.
Fair enough. But no.
Mertin will drink his drink and look at the dwarf. How happy does the dwarf look with his wine, or his juice?
Not happy at all.
Holst sort of shuffles back over in y'all's direction. And turning his attention to the dwarf, it says, I don't think I've caught your name yet, good sir.
The name's Morek.
He nods and then turns his attention towards the Morrite and says, and you?
Mikael.
He nods again and and places down the mug he was working on, wiping his brow for a moment, says, well, Rolf should be here soon to pick up your services. I imagine you'll find him to be a rather interesting individual. And he frowns at the dwarf for a moment and says, well, at least two of you.
Interesting individual, how so?
He sort of pauses for a moment, scratches his chin, and says, well, Rolf's probably the youngest commander we've had of the Black Wolves. I used to be a part of that regiment before the damn greenskins took my hand.
I feel for you with the hand.
He shrugs.
Greenskins are always a menace.
At this, he nods vehemently and sort of looks around at his moderate inn and says, well, I can't be too mad at the bastards. Because I lost my hand, I was discharged with honorable service, and due to the fact that much of the city was being rebuilt after some beastman invasion some while back, I was out deployed, so I wasn't really here for it. I managed to get my hands on one of these new inns they were building.
Can I tell if the hand is dwarf crafted?
It is not.
It's not.
It seems to be made out of a fine sort of wood, and it's moderately decent, but it's definitely man-made.
That's quite the fortunate turn of fate, my friend. Referring to his earlier comment about getting the bar.
He nods and says, it's not too bad. I kind of miss fighting out in the field with my battle brothers, but he sort of looks down at his rather large belly at this point and says, but I think I might have outgrown being able to do that sort of thing anymore.
How old is this barkeep?
He appears to probably be in his late 40s. Without too much further time passing, you hear shouting coming from outside the inn, and the barkeep, and it sounds like a man who is very boisterous, but there's like a stern note to his voice, and the barkeep seems to smirk for a moment and says, ah, there's the captain now.
Mertin will turn and look at the door.
Same.
Suddenly, the door bursts open, and and two men wearing black and red outfits carrying halberds smash their way into the door without managing to cause it too much damage. And they appear in fairly stern moods. They look very on alert. Seems they're very well trained. And they have pretty high quality armaments as well. And then in behind them walks a pretty young man. He can't be older than 22, maybe 23. And he's wearing the same armament, but he has a very, very high quality looking sword at his hip. And he sort of gazes around the bar with a very steely, blue-eyed gaze before focusing on the three of you.
I'm gonna look him straight in the eyes and say nothing.
He meets your gaze without so much as a flinch and approaches the bar. He takes a seat next to Mertin and nods and says, Holst, good to see you again, my friend. I'll have some of that terrible piss wine that you're serving all the other customers. Holst rolls his eyes for a moment and starts filling him a cup. And he turns towards the three of you for a moment, and then looks back at Holst, and Holst nods. And he turns and says, "So you're the sorry excuses I get to work with, then?"
Sorry,
It would appear
excuse.
so.
One at a time. Otherwise, I can't hear what anyone says.
I'm just gonna laugh at his comment.
Sorry, excuse.
He glares down at the dwarf for a moment and sort of seems to have a rather upturn. He has a snarl kind of appear on his face for a moment and says, "If they had told me they were accepting dwarves, I probably would have told them to pass this on to a different company."
Got a problem with me?
He raises an eyebrow and says, "With you personally, no, but it's probably only a matter of time before you cause me some issue that I'm going to have to deal with, as your kind always do."
I will start counting very slowly underneath my breath.
He glares at you for a moment, expecting some response, but when you don't come up to the bait, he shrugs and turns his attention to the priest sitting beside you and frowns and says, "I'm to believe that you're accepting the mercenary position."
Yes.
He frowns and says, "Did the church send you?"
No.
And at this point he starts scowling and says, "And yet you're here. Is it for the pay?"
No.
He pauses for a moment and says, "Then why are you accepting the position?"
The god commands. I obey.
At this, he almost immediately rolls his eyes, but then turns his attention back down to Mertin and says, "And you?"
No, is it pay?
At this, he nods and says, "Well, at least there's one sensible person among the three of you." He starts-
finished my glass.
He starts heading towards the table and says, "Well, if you're joining with what we're going to be doing, then follow me and I'll fill you in on the details."
Grumbles and then moves.
I'm gonna lean against the wall as opposed to sitting down.
I presume that if the dwarf could hear him from over there, I can hear him from
Oh
over
yeah,
here.
easily.
Thank you.
Well, if you want to hear the conversation at this table, you will need to move closer just because there are walls in the way. You heard the conversation at the bar, but for this conversation, you'll need to... you'll probably need to be in at least this ballpark area.
That's a pity. I join the table.
Okay, as the captain sits down, suddenly a black-robed figure joins the lot of you, and he does not appear alarmed, but he glances sideways at the figure beside him and frowns and says, "Can I help you?"
You might start speaking.
He pauses for a moment and seems to realize what he's talking to. Remind me what your appearance is, Izzy?
Which parts of my appearance?
Like clothing-wise.
Character sheet.
Don't you have a leather jerkin armor thing?
I'm wearing a leather jack. There's the hood on the cloak, obviously. I've got some worn boots on. I presume some trousers somewhere.
All right,
as
so
well.
yeah, so you're wearing a hood. That's okay. That's what I was needing to know.
Okay.
He sort of turns in his chair towards you and says, "So you're joining with the mercenaries then?"
If you'll call them that, sure.
He shrugs and says, "Well, they're getting paid to do our dirty work, so I'm not sure what else you would call them."
Idiots, but...
And he sort of smirks at you and says, "Well, then, welcome to the idiots," and turns his attention back to the rest of the table. He pulls out a sheet of paper and seems to address it for a moment, and then looks up at you and says, "I'm going to get, quite frankly, straight to the point. We're looking for a small group to function as a bodyguard of sorts for one of the wizards that works for the Countess herself. That being said, that's not going to be the first job you're performing, as we don't know any of you, and for all we know, either you're completely incompetent or perhaps even assassins."
A wise precaution.
He shrugs and says, "Therefore, we're going to allow you to ingratiate yourself with most of the people around these parts. I would suggest you talk to Holst if you're looking for some of the more minor jobs. All you really need to do is spend maybe a week here, doing some menial tasks, working with either Holst, other members of the community, or perhaps even my second-in-command who I'll send by tomorrow. Once you get enough work done and we know that you're capable of handling yourselves without dying, then maybe we'll talk about your actual mission.
Very well.
So, are we getting paid while we do this?
He glares at you and says, "Why would I pay you for doing something other than what I agreed to pay you for?"
Well, for improving the name of the Black Wolves and doing the community work.
At this, he scowls at you and says, "You are most certainly not being associated with the Black Wolves. We're being forced to deal with you, but you are not a member of our community, nor do I want you associated with our good name."
And why are you being forced to deal with us?
He seems to try. He seems to think about ignoring the dwarf for a moment, but without looking at him, keeping his gaze on Mertin, he says, "Because the Countess trusts us with this sort of task and has kindly asked of me to ensure that I guarantee that our valued wizard of the community, one of our highest level wizards, he was actually sent from the Altdorf itself to work alongside many of the casters we have here, stays alive."
When do we begin?
He stands up from the table and says, "As soon as you'd like. I'll be checking in with Holst on your progress. Try and stay alive, and if you cause any trouble, I'll be the one that's going to come after you, so don't think of doing anything too ridiculous."
Never.
He gives you a very half-hearted salute and starts heading for the front door. Also, yeah, feel free to use the emote system if you'd like to in the text. The typing is not against the rules, by the way.
I get up and I leave the table.
Okay. He passes by Holst and grabs a drink on his way out, downs it in one go, slams it back on the table, and then walks out the door along with his 2 guards.
I also rise and move back to the bar.
As I pass the barkeep, I say, "Cheery fellow, that one."
He shrugs and says, "He's earned the right to be dour, lad. Watched a lot of his own men die. But he's the best there is, I can tell you that much."
I'm gonna walk to the edge of the bar and talk to and motion to the bartender.
He seems to get rather nervous again before nodding to the dwarf for a moment, and then slides over and says, "I don't suppose you're ordering a drink or food."
No, but how much for beds?
At this, he nods and says, "Well, lucky for you, despite the fact old Rolf may seem to be a complete arse, he has went ahead and paid for your lodgings at this fine establishment."
I'm gonna slide him a crown and say, in preparation for any damages caused by the elf and the dwarf.
He frowns. He seems to glance in their direction and frowns at you and says, "Why, have you seen something?"
No, just a precaution.
He takes the crown and frowns at you further, but without another word, slides back down to the table. He nods. He sort of glances at the 3 of you, seeing as Mertin hasn't reappeared yet, and says, "When you're ready for a job I've heard about, I can give you some details, or of course you can just relax and enjoy the day. It's up to how you want to do things. Rolf has informed me that you have roughly a week."
So what's this job?
He scratches his chin for a moment and says, "Mayhaps you should gather your allies here. That way I don't have to repeat myself."
Then I should repeat my order. You
I'm
have
gonna sigh
remembered
and
that,
walk
have you
back to the table and go and walk over to Mertin.
After spending a minute thinking about really not taking this job at all, Mertin will get up and go towards the counter with the priest.
Okay, as you all approach, he nods for a moment and says, "Well, as I informed you, lads, I have unfortunately been rather limited in my stores due to shipments not coming from the north. From what I've heard, there seems to be some issue with wagons trying to pass here from Altdorf, so perhaps you could go to the merchant's quarter and figure out what the hell is going on out there."
Where are we at in the city, by the way?
Y'all are probably about 20 minutes from the merchant's quarter. We'll worry about the map when y'all actually leave the inn.
Okay.
Okay.
Then indeed I repeat my previous order. A glass of water. And half of it wine.
He gives you a somewhat strained look, but goes ahead and fills your order again.
Charming man.
How practiced does the barkeep look at doing this? Does it look like this is something he often does, maybe on the sly?
What, dealing with adventurers?
No, watering down the wine.
He seems to not, like, be completely against the idea, but the amount of water that he's adding to it seems to have him moderately confused. So it's possible that he's watered down drinks before, but never to that extent.
Is it possible that he's not watered them down on request?
No, he's definitely watering it down on request.
I
You're
know.
saving him money, he won't complain.
I know he's watering me down on request, but I don't imagine it to be a very common request.
Probably not, no.
Or indeed, winding up my water.
I'm gonna sigh and start walking towards the door.
None of that was dialogue, by the way.
I know.
Yeah, I got it.
Just checking.
You headed out to the merchant quarter, Manling. I call after you.
It appears someone has to.
Yeah.
Until you have reached a certain point in the campaign, essentially past the first session, you may not split up. That's
Okay.
what I'm going to just tell you now.
Mertin will grumble about community service and follow.
I drink as I walk towards the door and leave my glass on a table nearby.
Okay, are you all leaving?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Alright then, to the map.
As I do, I adjust my hood so that my face can't be clearly seen underneath it.
I'm enjoying
Cool.
this, and we haven't actually done anything yet.
Did you even get my description, Sotek?
Nope, you can feel free to describe yourself.
At an appropriate moment.
Well, I am bald and my scalp is tattooed.
Oh, you're that sort of dwarf. Lovely.
Alright, so you guys are roughly in this ballpark right now.
Okay.
The merchant quarter is that he basically referred to. The nearest one is down over here. Obviously, the northern gate is over here. Or you could always go down to the southern gate, if you'd like, which is down there. Those are the areas accessible to you at the moment. As you do more, you will unlock more areas.
Yep.
Once we are past the first couple sessions, the entire city will be open to you, but for right now, I'm restricting your access.
Right. After we exit the gate, the inn, I'm going to turn to look at everyone following me and ask, so do we go to the merchant quarters, or do we find something else to do?
Lead on to the merchant quarter.
The merchant quarter seems like the best way to start. At least
Go
to
on,
find out
man,
what
Ling,
might
just
be
walk.
causing it.
Very well.
Walk, Manling.
I just turn and start walking towards the merchant quarter.
Alright, on to the merchant quarter then. Do. Alright, let's zoom out a tad.
Not quite as filthy as I was expecting you to make it.
Well, they all are kind of in the poorer district, but it's not the most poor district. And let me just summon your guys. Let's see if I remember how to do this. Actually, easy way to do this. Huzzah!
What is our start position?
You will be coming out of the southern area.
Very well.
Alright, you have arrived in the opening merchant quarter area. You notice a couple shopkeepers, a few people shopping. It doesn't seem terribly active. Obviously, many of the stalls actually look rather sparse for supplies, even considering how this place must be. There are some guards in the top area just to make sure there isn't any trouble, and that's pretty much all you know at the moment.
At this point, my guy's gonna slowly fall back to the back of the group so he doesn't, like, intimidate people.
Dwarf just walks through, goes to the first stand to the right.
Okay.
Elf does the same, but takes the stand behind, so to speak, which would be this one.
Okay.
First, we'll go talk to the cheesemonger.
I hope
Or
it's
whatever
cheese.
he is.
What's the stall on the top left?
That guy appears to be some sort of blacksmith.
Okay, so I'm
Mine
gonna
is
go to the,
bread, by the looks of it, I presume.
Yes.
I'm gonna go talk to the blacksmith.
Okay. Dwarf, you had the shortest distance to cover, so you will go first. You approach, and the butcher is hacking away at some sort of carcass.
So, I've been hearing rumors that shipments haven't been arriving. Can you affirm any of this?
He raises an eyebrow in your direction and says, I can affirm that. Surprised a dwarf gives two damns.
I technically don't, but I wanted to know anyway.
He frowns at your lack of empathy and turns back to his work grumbling and says, if you ain't buying something, then get lost.
What do you got to sell?
He sort of glances your direction in annoyance and says, the hell do you think I'm selling, Master Dwarf? Meat!
I mean, its origin. I can't seem to dine what carcass you're cutting up at the moment.
He sort of points a thumb at it and says, this is a pig from the outskirts. I sell mostly what we can find at the moment.
Mostly what you can find?
He sort of raises an eyebrow and says, because you're a dwarf, I'm not going to bother lying to you. The last time I tried to pull that off, I ended up with a broken nose.
It's a good choice.
He glowers and says, either buy or leave. I don't want to have to call the guards to deal with you.
Leaves.
Okay. Mertin, you're up next.
Hello, good sir. I was looking for some hard cheese, just for a day or so.
He sort of nods and says, I don't believe I've seen you around these parts before. I'd recognize a man with such heavy armaments.
No, I just got into town recently, and it turns out that the inn that I'm staying at apparently does not have very much decent food because of the troubles with the shipments.
At this, he sort of nods, and he's an older, portly man, and his jowls sort of wobble a bit, and he goes, yes, we've sort of fallen on hard times recently. Nothing from Altdorf seems to be making its way here anymore.
Has anyone dared out by?
Take a gossip check. So, for those of you who want to make sure you know how to do this correctly, you'd go to your character sheet, open it, go to character sheet, find gossip, and just click the little roll thing next to it.
Nat
Or
one.
you could roll...
Oh wait, no, that's 26, not a nat one. That's a
Yeah.
success.
But still, you got a success. Great job. He sort of nods and points behind you and says, "Oh, over there's a caravan, or at least it was supposed to be a caravan, that arrived from Altdorf not too long ago. You might talk to them."
Thank you. And how much was the cheese?
At this, he sort of scratches his chin for a moment and says, "How about, let's say a silver?"
I look at the cheese. How much cheese is this?
It's probably like, if you were to eat from it consistently, it would probably last you maybe 2 days. He is definitely charging a bit much.
How about, let's say 10 coppers?
Haggle check.
I'm not good at this.
It's right under gossip.
As a side note, I'm still walking towards the blacksmith, right?
Yes,
Would I
it's
have
probably
heard this
assumed.
conversation?
What?
Would I
No,
have heard-
you're too far gone. And it's like fairly noisy because people are working. He shakes his portly head, jowls a wobbling, and says, "I'm afraid I can't afford to do that. We've fallen on such hard times, you see. Unfortunately, I don't believe I can go any cheaper. I have a family to feed, after all."
Well, families. They are important, yeah. I find I will pay the silver.
Okay, you lose a silver and you gain enough cheese to last you for 2 days, and it's of average quality.
How many silvers make up a gold piece?
I believe it is 12.
How
20
many
for silver
lesser?
to gold, 12 for coppers to silver.
There you go.
Just about to ask that. Thank you.
All right. So Martin learned a little bit of something, but obviously he's the only one that knows about it yet. Elf, you are the next one.
Are you initiating this conversation, or am I?
He is busy working, so if you want to catch his attention, you're going to have to probably do something. Although I guess you could just stand there until he notices you.
As tempting as that is. Excuse me, sir.
He sort of looks up, and he appears to be a rather pensive man, sort of glances around as if not realizing you're talking to him, before turning back to you and says, yes.
It appears to me, if appears is the right word, that you have the finest produce here in the market. Or perhaps I'm just given to bread. Might I inquire as to how much a loaf might cost?
He seems to grin at your rather nice compliment and says, and he seems almost mesmerized by the lilting tone of your voice due to being an elf. It says, for a lady such as yourself, how about 5 pennies?
Because, yes, I don't know if we've made this clear to the viewers yet. My character is female. I can't do a female voice.
It's
So
okay,
you can have
nobody cares, you're
a
fine.
rolling accent.
Yeah,
Repeat the question, please.
I can't do a German voice. I'm still trying.
He offers you the loaf for 5 brass.
You mean 5 copper?
Yes, that, whatever.
That seems a very reasonable price.
He
Might
nods
I-
and says, only the fairest, of course.
I would agree. Might I ask, though, your stand here seems to be performing well. As well it should. But you do seem to be the exception.
At this, he sort of frowns and says, well, I'm able to get most of my produce from the area surrounding Nuln, but even then I'm missing some of the more, shall we say, crucial ingredients to some things I used to sell quite in bounty, but things haven't been coming in from any direction lately.
Well, why? What did you once sell that you do not now?
At this point, his eyes seem to glaze over for a moment. He says, I used to sell these wonderful baguettes, and I used to receive things from Bretonia, and I had some wonderful trade partners, but and then he sort of looks really down. It's just like, I haven't heard from anyone lately from out of town. It's almost as if we're closed off here.
There's nothing that you might know of that might suggest to you why this is the case.
Take a gossip check. But
Mine may have to do this.
whenever I say take a check, by the way, there are always modifiers, but I will not tell y'all what the modifiers are unless it's like super
Remind me
obvious.
how I do this, please.
So, go to the character sheet tab at the top right,
Character sheet.
and then open up your sheet. go to character sheet, and then on the far right, find gossip, and then click the die next to it.
Dice.
Okay. So at this, he sort of shrugs a bit, and he goes, I don't know much about it. My suppliers haven't even been arriving. I'm afraid I can't help you.
A great pity. But I will take that loaf of bread from you.
He nods enthusiastically and gives you a loaf of bread for 5 penny. So be sure to mark that exchange.
Where do I mark it?
When you go into your character sheet, at the very bottom, you'll find your money at wealth. So
yes.
you would knock crowns down from 4 to 3, and then over at pennies, I think it's how many pennies go into a crown off the top of my head?
A crown or silver?
A crown.
A crown.
Well, how many silvers are there in a crown, and how many pennies are there in a silver?
12 silvers in a crown.
240, I think.
There are 240 brass pennies for gold. So you will have 235 brass pennies. Oh yeah, they're not copper, they're brass, because Empire.
Fine.
Okay.
It's both alloys.
And add to your trappings a loaf of average quality bread. It is nothing stellar, but it'll help you survive if you need it. All right.
What is the encumbrance value?
Just write like 2. But it'll probably go in your backpack, so it's not actually going to count against you.
Sure.
All right. Mikael, you're up next. He is hammering away at something fairly fresh off the forge, and so you're probably going to need to be rather noisy to catch his attention.
Question. So after the dwarf is on screen has moved up next to me, do I notice that he's coming or no?
No.
Okay.
Technically, he would still be at least moderately on the way,
Okay.
if not still engaged in conversation.
Okay.
There, that's better.
I'm gonna walk right up to the thing and say excuse me moderately loudly.
Okay, he hammers a few more blows before sort of glancing in your direction, and he does a full-on double take and almost drops the hammer and says, "Bless me heart, I haven't lost someone, have I?"
No, good sir, I'm not here for that.
He sort of lets out a breath of relief, and then almost seems rather angry at the false alarm and says, "Then what the hell are you here for?"
To prevent such loss.
This now he appears rather nervous.
Sir, have you been receiving more requests?
At this, he shakes his head and says, No, the church usually orders from someone much more high quality than what
I'm not referring to the church.
At this, he frowns.
One sec, I'm trying to think of what to say.
Yeah, I wasn't really planning my dialogue either.
Yeah.
You will almost never have time to plant dialogue.
Yeah, I'm... Basically what I want to say, and I'm clearly speaking out of character, is something along the lines of I'm trying to inquire as to the, like the shortages by insinuating that people are buying more weapons and protection as opposed to food.
I don't know,
Take
you
your
better
time.
find a clever way to say it then.
Yeah. Like, sir, I mean to ask is if you have been been receiving more requests where the food merchants have not.
At this, he shakes his head and says, "Those bastards have been selling more than me. I just can't get anything anymore. This is my stock for like the last 3 weeks."
Curious.
And at this, he sort of leans forward and says, "You're associated with the church. You could put in a request for them to visit Altdorf and see what's going on, right?"
Why do you think I'm here?
At this, he actually seems a little bit more upbeat, though he's still obviously unnerved by your presence. Says, "Good. Yes, that's good."
So what can you tell me of these shortages?
Take a gossip check.
Yep.
He still seems rather nervous. and sort of picks up his hammer again and says, I don't know much about it. I'm just trying to keep to my work. He sort of seems to rub his temple for a moment and says, I know it has something to do with the caravans that have been coming south, but I'm afraid I can't tell you much more than that.
So
it's been a
at this
long
point,
day.
I'm going to lean forward and like, I'm going to try an intimidation check, but I'm going to say something beforehand.
Okay.
And it's like, sir, are you aware, or like, how wrong it is to lie to a priest?
Okay, roll an intimidation check.
And I'd like to point out that my face can't be seen under my hood very well.
Okay. As you lean forward, he turns extremely pale and says, I just remembered there's a wagon that just came in from Altdorf that should be over there. And he points in the direction of the wagon on the other side of the stalls.
Thank you. It's like, may you not see another of my orders soon.
And as you are walking away, he says, Sigmar, preserve me. And makes a symbol of the hammer.
Yeah.
I presume that I can see this wagon as well, even though I don't know.
You see it. You're probably not aware of the significance of it, but your party's probably relatively gathering close to one another in the center of the...
I'm going to walk towards the Dwarfen. Or, actually, I'm going to walk towards the elf, because the elf probably sticks out more.
I stick out probably about as much as you, given that we're almost wearing exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
The dwarf definitely sticks out the most of the four of you.
I was just about to say that.
True. Then I'm going to walk to the dwarf.
The elf is tall and definitely draws attention of the more unnerving type, but the dwarf is just blindingly obvious.
What'd you find out, Manling?
It appears that there's a wagon we should inspect. Follow.
Mertin's already heading toward the wagon waving.
Yeah. It's like, go with Mertin. I'll grab the elf.
Thank the gods.
I start towards the wagon before Phaon arrives.
Okay.
Having seen the other two, and having heard everything they said.
The elf dismissively walks ahead of you.
Then I walk around the other path.
As you approach, you see two rather tired-looking men unloading a wagon full of some goods, but all of you have your attention rather quickly drawn to some arrows that are sticking out of the side of it.
I'm going to walk up to them and ask, is there any reason for my services to be required?
Well, one of them looks at you with very, very tired expression. There are like bags under his eyes and says, unfortunately, my lord, you've missed most of that. I think they've been providing nourishment for whatever beasts live in the forests at this point.
My sympathies.
He sort of shrugs
Morr
and continues his work.
So some beast porcupined your wagon?
At this, one of them turns and scoffs at you and says, they were beasts all right, but they were wearing men's skin. Damnable witch hunters. Said that they needed to procure our supplies for some great crusade he was going against. We told him no, and next thing we know, there are arrows flying from every direction.
I will turn...
You say?
Yeah, I was going to turn to Mertin and be like, what did he just say?
He said that a witch hunter confiscated the goods so that he could carry out his campaign against something.
A Templar did this?
At this, one of them nods and says, pretty grimy-looking fellow for a witch hunter. I've seen a few, Sigmar bless me, but all of them were fairly grim of aspect. This one just seemed like a loony, though. Killed 3 of my lads before we were able to get out of there. We're lucky the horse wasn't hit.
And what
Mertin
was
will
this?
pull out his folded piece of paper and open it and said, did he look like this?
They look at it and shake their heads.
Oh well, was worth a try.
How far out of Nolan was this?
Let's see.
At this point, Mikael is going to stare at Mertin with a look of, are you going to do that every time?
Yes. Mertin will look at you and say yes.
That one of them gestures to the northern part of the city and said, they're in the forest that follows out of the north gate towards Altdorf. I'm sure if you go along the path, they'll be sure to greet you sooner or later.
Did you see any other wagons along your way?
At this, one of them shakes his head and another one pipes up. There was a wagon that was not too far behind us that we saw when passing through one of the smaller towns. They never arrived in the city.
And how do these witch hunters, you call them, how did they greet you? How did they stop you?
At this, he just sort of shrugs and says, "We just saw him standing on the road. He looked well enough like a witch hunter. We thought he was just going to ask us for directions or some sort, or maybe, I don't know, check the wagon for heresy. But instead, he demanded we hand over our supplies, and when we refused, because we needed to get this shipment here to Nuln, next thing we knew, arrows just started flying at us from the trees."
May I inquire as to what you were carrying?
They gestured behind them and said, "Just food, mostly."
Curious that a Templar of Sigmar would need food.
One of them spits on the ground and says, "This is the problem with Sigmar. He shouldn't even be allowed in our city."
Well, he apparently needs all the ale, too.
One of them nods and says, "Aye, they've been confiscating everything coming along the road, I'll bet." Damn Sigmarites. This is why Tall should be the one in charge.
How many arrows are in the side of the cart? Do we know?
3.
3.
So at the mention of like the guy's kind of blasphemies, Mikael's gonna like raise an eyebrow.
You said over there that they can't see your face.
I know. Just because they can't say it doesn't mean I'm not gonna do it.
Did this witch hunter give you his name?
They shake their heads and said, they just said all he said was that he was a Templar of the Church and that he had the authority of Sigmar behind him. Damned bastard. If you don't mind, we really do need to get back to work.
At this, I'm gonna turn to walk away but say, the Morr will embrace your comrades.
What time of day is it, Sotek?
It's about midday.
How long do I think it would take me to get there? To the site of this?
Probably most of the day. You'll probably arrive by nightfall.
Probably better to start off in the morning then.
Maybe.
So are you muttering these aloud, or...?
I'm thinking.
Okay.
So then it looks like we need to make a little trip out of town.
Probably best to start in the morning.
Back to the inn, then.
Well, I think I'm going to go get some rations from that meat seller then. I do not want to go out there without anything to eat.
Indeed.
But, Morek will head over to the blacksmith.
Okay.
Vivandrel will walk up to the two men on her own.
Okay.
I'm just gonna sit there leaning against the thing because I noticed the elf moving.
Dwarf, you'll go first.
So, when I get over there, I want to inspect the quality of his work.
Okay. Roll a...
I have both smith and armorer.
Let me see. Give me one sec.
Sotek, for reference, I can hear what they're about to say, right? From where my guy's standing.
Maybe. Depends on how softly they talk.
Okay. I'm standing basically just within earshot, is what I'm planning on doing.
Roll a evaluation check, Dwarf.
Evaluate?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, nice. All right. You inspect most of his wares. Almost everything he has is of average quality. There's a few poor qualities, but he does have one sword that is of good quality. Though he seems to think of all of his weapons as mostly the same.
Does he even notice me yet?
He's kind of glancing your direction, but he seems pretty intent on finishing the work he's currently on.
And the work that he's currently doing, is he, in my mind, doing it correctly?
No, not even close. To you, he's like an infant wielding a hammer 3 times its size, trying to make a weapon of grandeur.
So I call out, would you like me to show you a few tricks?
He looks up and sort of looks in your direction, and at first he looks really indignant. But then when he realizes you're a dwarf, he seems to pull back a bit and sort of frowns at you and says, "Is this some sort of trick?"
I don't trick. Dwarves don't trick.
He pauses for a moment and sort of looks around and says, "Well, what do you want then? I've never heard of a dwarf offering free services."
I just have the hankering to hold a hammer.
At this, he sort of looks around for a moment and shrugs and says, "Well, I'm not going to turn down free labor."
Okay, so I will see if I can help out.
Alright, go ahead and go in to the stall, and I will come back to you in a minute.
Alrighty.
Mertin, you reach the meat fellow. If all you're intending to do is buy rations, you don't have to worry about role-playing it. Just let me know how much you want to buy.
Alright, I want to buy a week's worth of rations, just to have around, because I don't know how good of food this place is going to have, the bowl. The iron bowl.
Okay, as a warning, it would probably be wiser to buy rations back at the inn, because he will actually give you an assortment of food as opposed to just raw meat.
Okay. I just wanted to check if he had anything cooked.
Nah, he's mostly just purely a butcher. He's not much in the cooking art of things.
I'll take a glance and walk away.
Okay, you don't see anything particularly amazing, and most of the meat is actually rather suspicious of origin anyway. God only knows what corners he's been cutting to make sure he has enough to sell. Elf, you're up next.
Would it be worth examining? Is there some sort of check that one could take to learn something interesting about these arrows?
Evaluation check.
Evaluation check. Shall we do that then?
Okay. You don't really have to deal with those guys to do it. You can just rip one of the arrows out of the wagon and put for on the check.
I have questions for them.
Oh, okay. Well, go ahead and do the check, which is the same thing you just did earlier, except for find evaluate as opposed to gossip. Okay, you look at it. It is crude. Like, it's definitely not of elven make. That's the only thing I can tell you.
Okay. Now I shall speak to the gentleman.
Okay, they're hard at work, but one of them notices you and sort of starts dusting off his hands and stands up.
Tell me, honestly, where in the road were you when you saw this witch hunter, and what was he wearing? Exactly.
Take a gossip check. He shrugs and says, "Honestly, miss, everything passed in such a blur I don't remember much about it. He was wearing a brown trench coat, I can tell you that much, and a hat. He had a really, really big hat, but outside of that, I don't remember much. Everything just flew by too quickly."
Big as in large, or big as in tall?
He sort of shrugged and said, "Both?"
Thank you, gentlemen. I wish you a very good day.
Your rather strange form of speech makes them kind of glance nervously at each other, but then they get back to work.
I move... where shall I go? I shall definitely move away.
Okay, and once you're done in this area,
towards the blacksmith, I think.
Okay. As you approach the blacksmith, it does not take long for you to notice that the dwarf is in there hammering away, and
At
the
this
blacksmith...
point, I'm going to walk up to the elf and ask if she learned anything. Learn anything useful?
Elf, you have been intercepted.
Yes. And no.
I'm going to nod and then just keep walking towards the blacksmith.
Good job, Elf. Alright, as you two sort of approach the blacksmith, it does not take long for you to notice that the hammer blows have grown very, very much in intensity. As far as loudness and how rapid it is. And as you turn the corner, you see the blacksmith sort of standing and watching with rather big eyes, and you see the dwarf laboring over the anvil.
It appears our friend is a master smith.
You're friends already?
term of phrase. My kind have no friends among the living.
And among the dead?
Mertin, you arrive.
So the dwarf is now helping out the smith. Goodbye.
I don't think you know.
That is me asking.
He is asking this in dialogue accent. Ben isn't actually false German, remember?
Hey, we don't know what he identifies as. Maybe Ben is, in his heart, a false German.
Or even Hollywood German.
Oh, so you're British. Wonderful.
Well played.
Yeah,
Didn't see that
yeah.
coming.
Points.
For those wondering what the heck we're talking about, the Empire's always been given British accents in video games.
Despite the fact that they should have German, as Ben is very
Dwarf!
admirably serving.
Yes.
Take a smithing check.
Okay.
Okay, you're hammering away, and the quality of the weapon that you're forging to the blacksmith you're working with seems like one of the most amazing things he's ever seen, but you're pretty disappointed with the materials you've been given to work with.
Yeah.
It's not turning out as you would like. Also, this is a good time to bring up, each one of you has fortune points that works on a daily basis. So the way fortune points work is, should you perform a check and you are not satisfied with the results, for instance, Morek may wish that he was forging much better right now, you can elect to use a fortune point at any time on any kind of roll with very minor exceptions. And what that means is that you immediately get to perform a reroll. Fortune points, the amount of fate points you have, that's how many fortune points you have in a day. So if you have 2 fate points, that means every day you get 2 fortune points. Once you're out of fortune points, you get no more rerolls until the following day. That being said, if for whatever reason you're being pursued or you're sick or something and you're not able to rest between days, you do not get to reset your fortune points. You have to rest.
So we can only ever go up to a maximum of whatever.
Yeah,
And we can't carry them over.
that is correct. They
And
reset each day.
And when
Okay.
do we use the fate points?
Fate points are only used if you die.
Yeah.
So if something happens to you that would result in your death, you would use a fate point, and it would cause your death to be retconned into you living somehow.
Not exactly a pleasant form of living, but you know.
Alright, I will go ahead and actually use one.
Okay,
My fortune.
so reroll.
Damn it!
Okay, you have one more if you'd like to try again.
I have 2 more actually.
Oh, you have 3 fate points? Nice.
Yep.
Everyone has 3 fate points except for Izzy.
Okay,
I have 2 to my recollection.
yeah. Would you like to try again?
I will not, but I will say I will come back when I get downtime and I'll show you a couple tricks.
Okay, he's pretty mesmerized by your skill. If any dwarf were there, they would be pretty not impressed.
Yeah, I know. That's why.
So-
I will turn and see a lot of faces staring at me.
Yes, you notice you have a bit of an audience.
Back to the tavern then.
Then we could probably go check the gate before we go back to the inn tavern.
That also works. Lead on.
Well, before
Okay,
we
y'all
go
wanna go
on,
to the
Val,
gate?
Val, don't you need to eat at some point?
In like 15 minutes.
Indulge me. Why are we going to the gate?
The guards
Well, I
might
want to
know a
talk
little
to
bit
the
more.
Guards. Mertin will wave his paper.
Yes,
I came
thank
in
you.
through the south gate. And technically I'm not allowed to split up from you people.
Okay, y'all want to approach the north gate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ever dedicated to his chase, our bounty hunter.
Then by all means, let's go to the north gate.
Okay, y'all approach the north gate. We're just going to go back to the map view.
None of my last 2 sentences were dialogue, by the way.
Yeah, I figured.
My last one
Good.
was, though.
Alright, y'all approach the north gate, and it doesn't take much in the way of investigation to realize that the guards that would probably be helpful either aren't working, haven't really cared enough to ask, or don't know enough to be useful.
Okay. So
back
back
to
to
the
the
inn.
tavern.
Back to the inn?
Mertin will comment that, oh, how silly of me. The south gate is where the route from Altdorf should be, right? We should probably check there.
That is... the other three of you realize that is completely incorrect.
Yeah.
That was out of character question.
Mikael is going to very calmly point out.
If that was out of character, the answer is no. Altdorf is definitely to the north.
Yeah.
Okay.
The guards are just not helpful.
I was about to say, if this was in character, Mikael was going to softly point out that Altdorf is to the north of Nuln.
It seems that indeed I have joined the idiots.
But that was out of character, so he's not an idiot. It's okay. But no,
Oh,
you do
I'm just
not
responding.
learn anything helpful.
I'm responding to the confused look on his face.
So back to the inn, or
Back to the
would you
inn.
like to go somewhere else?
Well,
where
the
else
only
can
other
we go?
area we have access to is the south gate, correct?
That is correct.
We should probably go back to the inn then.
Just trying to think if there's any particular reason we should go to the south gate.
Well, I'd go to the south gate just to check the paper
Yeah.
and see if Victor's
I'm-
been through there.
More wondering why Sotek is steering us back towards the inn.
I say that we should go to the south gate because if the ship okay, so I'm gonna say in character. Didn't I heard that all shipments were going, so perhaps the south gate is worth checking as well.
Yes, that is a very good idea. We should go to the south gate.
Gentlemen, you may go to the south gate as you please. If you are returning to the tavern later, that is where you shall find me.
This is an acceptable split up because you're not actually going into a map.
Yeah.
I will
Okay.
follow
I
the
thought it might be
menus.
somehow.
Okay, Izzy, you head back to the inn. Let's see. So I can actually do this. There you are. To the inn with you. All right. The rest of you approach the south gate, and you find a few guards standing around.
I'm gonna walk up to the guards.
Okay, and ask them what.
I'm going to inquire as to shipments lately.
The guard you're talking to sort of shrugs and says, honestly, I spend most of my time on the east gate, but I have heard that we've been having problems with no one showing up from this direction lately. It's a bit unnerving, actually.
Intriguing.
Has anyone passed through? Anyone at all?
They shake their heads and say, not except for anyone from the shanty town out that way, but from further south, we haven't seen anything.
No, that is interesting. By the way, have you seen this man?
They all look at the picture and shake their heads.
Damn. Has there been any news from further south?
At this, one of the guards sort of gives you an annoyed look and says, I just said we haven't had anyone from the south, so what do you think?
Well, I think this little piece of brass will make up for my silly question, and I will hand him a single penny.
He sort of shrugs and takes it.
I'm going to turn and start walking back towards the inn.
I
'Kay.
am ahead of you.
Okay, everyone's returning to the inn.
Yeah.
All right,
Can we check the east gate, or is that off limits?
that is off limits right now.
Fair enough. That and
Well,
there's two east gates, but whatever.
Yeah.
Why is the east gate off limits?
Because y'all are technically still in tutorial mode, so I am directing where
Right.
you're allowed to go at the moment.
Thank you.
Once you have completed the first session, you will have hilarious amounts of freedom. But right now, I am restricting your access to freedom because y'all could end up accidentally wandering into something you really don't need to wander into right now.
Fair enough.
See, remember how I told you it end really fast and awkwardly? So, I hope you guys enjoyed the first episode. I think the rest are more going to be along the lines of 2 hours, because that's when they start getting into the thick of things. Just to give you a hint of what you have to look forward to, they get ambushed in a graveyard by some really nasty things. They end up going up against a terrifying beastie and all sorts of other nasty things, and they end up facing a witch hunter who's a bit off his rocker, so to speak. So, I hope you guys will enjoy this series. Once again, if I haven't beaten that horse dead already. Please don't forget to like or dislike based on how you feel about the series. I want you guys to enjoy it. But the easiest way for me to change my content to make it better for you guys is to get feedback from you guys. So I hope you had fun. Like I said, y'all will have input as it gets rolling. So after the tutorial, so to speak, there will be other things. As you are the watching party, you will get to sort of know narrative things that the party's unaware of, because they are all banned from watching these videos, and I will know if they watch them, and they will not like it if I find out. And they will also ruin the fun for themselves. So they won't be watching these videos, so we can talk safely down in the comment section, all that stuff. And so y'all will get to know really fun things about them walking into traps or what kind of enemies they're facing. And I'll kind of talk about occasional things maybe from time to time. But in any event, yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time. Have a good night.